Hey everybody, it is Mr. Ensmer once again with a little video walking you through some miscellaneous things. We've talked, of course, about printing, and I want to talk a little bit more about the output stuff. Also start to incorporate some of the data we're using to show you there are different data types in programming. Of course, in math, you have integers, you have real numbers, if you have rational numbers, irrational numbers, complex numbers. The two big ones as far as numbers go on computer, of course, the integers and the decimals. And they do treat them a little bit differently. So I'm going to show you some of that today. I'm also going to show you some miscellaneous stuff about printing that doesn't really fit in any other place. So go ahead and put your head at the top if you haven't done so. I don't put the date and the period on these videos since they're sort of universal, meant to be watched whenever. So we'll start with some basic miscellaneous printing stuff. If you want to print a blank line, just a line by itself, let's say, for instance, you say, welcome to my program, and then below that you want to skip a line. So if I do a print by itself with nothing in the parentheses, it's going to print a blank line. Almost like saying quote, 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 quote would be an empty string. It's just, here it is, skip on down. So every time you do a print, it's going to output that text. And it skips a line at the end of it. So one print, another print, another print. You have 3 lines of code. So below this, maybe we'll do something like, let's go. I don't know, just make up some stuff as I go here. A couple other special things about printing. Let's say you want to print a quotation mark inside of a string. Now, you might not have considered this, but let's say I want to print out somebody saying something. If I try that, if I say print quote, my mother said, and then comma, quote, hello. Well, you can already tell what's messy about this. As soon as you type a quote, the computer thinks that you're ending the print statement, and of course that's no good. And so what we're going to do instead, we are going to use something called an escape character, which is really a fancy name for, it's a special character you're going to use to print a quote. Oops, wrong one. So I'm going to say my mother said, and then the comma, again, the comma is not really like an outside comma. It's like grammatically correct. My mother said, comma, and then the text. So we're going to do a backslash. It's the one that's above the enter key. And then it quotes. And then you're going to type out the text. My mother said, hello, exclamation mark. And then I want to do another quote, but I want to print the quote. So I'm going to do backslash quote. And then close one more quote, and then parentheses. So if you take a look at it, these two go together. So slash quote is not going to print the slash. You're going to see this in a second. It does not print the slash. It's a special symbol to the computer that says, hey, I want to print a quote, not end the line. So I have one there and I have one here. And then this closes off the entire thing. So let me try this out. I will save it as printing for miscellaneous. Save it. And there you go. My mother said, hello. So print the quotes. Does that come up all that often? Not really, but you never know. So you do the backslash to start a special character, and then you do a quotation mark. The backslash, again, is a special character to tell the computer to do something special. It's a special symbol. If I want to print a tab, /T. If I say print something like, let's do a chart, like X, and then I want to hit a tab. You see when I hit the tab key, I'm hitting the key like you guys can see it. Trust me when I say I just hit the tab and that comes up, that's not at all what I want to have happen. So don't do that. I'm going to hit escape to get rid of it. Hit X, and then instead of hitting the tab, I need to print a tab. So I'm going to do /T and then Y. And I know that looks very odd. Think of it like this. X, and then the tab, and then the Y. close parenthesis, and then, as I said one more time, let's try and run it. And so there you go, X, and then a tab, and a Y. I showed you up here how to print, it's funny, easy for me to say, print a blank line. I can also print a blank line by saying print a /n to create a blank line. So how does this work? Print, let's say hello, and then /n there. Again, it won't ever print those. Like they're not, I said that the stuff in green is literal. These are not literal. It's a character that tells the computer, print this special code. So hello there is going to print hello, and then skip a line there. And when I say skip a line, I mean like go to the next line down. The extra space that's there is because I put a space after the /n. So technically speaking, it should look like this. Just like technically speaking, it looks like that. I just didn't want it to look like that because it might confuse you. All right, so all of these things then beg the question, well, how would you print a backslash? Well, to print a backslash, you say two of them side by side. You're telling the computer, hey, what follows this is a special character. And that special character is the backslash. So if I say print parenthesis quote, let's say I want to print out, like somebody's hands in the air, like little, emoji type thing. So if I do this backslash, and then there's the person's head, and then there's their other arm, the computer's going to look at this and think it's a special code. If I try to run that as is, there it is. So as long as it's not a character that does something, you're okay. But, and again, I know this is like a very, very specific case. What if there was a T there? I don't know why you'd ever do that, why somebody's head looked like a T. Just play along with me for a second. If I want to do it surefire, I do two of them side by side. And voila, there is the arms and the head. Hooray! Okay. So that's the special printing stuff. The other portion of this video is to talk about integers versus decimals. All right, so let me just do a couple of different things here. If I do print 6 divided by 3, right? 2. Easy enough. If I run it, just to prove to us without a shadow of a doubt, my mouse, there it is. 2.0, as it should be. Okay? Now, there are other things to talk about with integers when you think way back to when you did long division, like back in elementary school. There's the quotient, the number on top of the division. Then there's the remainder, what's left over. If I do, let's say 6 divided by 4, 6 divided by 4 gives me 1.5, which it is. 3/2 is 1.5. But what if I don't want the 0.5? What if I want to have like, oh, there was a remainder of this? Like in this case, 6 divided by 4, it goes in one time with a remainder of 2. There's 2 left over. There's certain situations where you'd want the whole number part rather than the decimal part. And that's where this integer versus decimal stuff comes into play. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I say print, let's use a larger number, like let's say 32, and I say what's 32 divided by, let's do 5. Okay, 32 divided by 5 is going to go in 6 times with a remainder of 2. It's going to give me 6.4, 6 2/5. All right, all of you passed elementary middle school math, so I'm assuming you know where all this is coming from. Again, this is 6.4. 6.4, or 6 2/5. So like, how do we get those two things separated? How do we get the 6? How do we get the 2.5? Well, there's some commands. Print the integer, int. Int is a command, much like print. It gives you the integer part of your answer. The integer part, and again, you see 2 opening, 2 closing. The integer part is the 6. It will truncate. It will chop off any decimal. And the reason I'm saying specifically it'll chop off, because let's say I go up 1. Let's say I go to 33, right? 33 would be 6.6, or 6 3/5. So I want to make sure you understand it doesn't round. It just gets rid of it. The integer is 6. For those of you that are in like an upper level math class, the int, it's the greatest integer function. It's like the staircase if you graph it in your calculator. So this gives you the quotient, the whole number part, and it truncates the answer. In other words, it just chops off the decimal. So then how do you get the remainder? How do you get what's left over? Well, there's something in computers we call the mod, or the modulus. And this comes up more often than you'd think. I'm going to plant the seed in your head now, and it's going to come up very soon. If I do 33, and then the symbol is percent, 33% 5. If I try that, it's going to give me 3. Where did 3 come from? Well, as a reminder, it's 3/5. 6 3/5. Okay. I'm going to take a quick little trip here to Microsoft Paint, and forgive my mouse drawing skills, but if I take 33 and I say, what's 33 divided by 5? Right? Here's long division. The number on top, the quotient, is 6. You get 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 5, 30. Subtract that, you get 3. So you get 3/5. Well, if you remember, like that turns into 2.6. That turns into a fraction. But you might recall, all the way back in elementary school, we did something like that. R3, remainder of 3. The remainder is useful on a computer for many things. And again, I'm just planting the seed now, but let me just kind of plant it a little bit deeper. The modulus, the remainder, is used for things like military time. Right now, when I'm recording this, it's about 4 p.m. In military time, that's 1,600 hours. There's a 12-hour cycle, 16 divided by 12, 1 time with remainder of 4. That's how we get 4 p.m. This is also even for factoring and for even and odd. If you want something that's even, there's no remainder when you divide by 2. Think about any even number, divide by 2. What's the remainder? 0. Think of any odd number, divide by 2. What's the remainder? It's 1. That's where we get it. It divides it evenly or it doesn't. It's an odd 1 out. So we'll talk more about this mod thing in the days and weeks to come. As I said, it comes up much more often on a computer than you would think. And this is the remainder, which is 3. We call that the modulus, or mod for short. Okay. So we talked about the decimal part, the whole number part. We talked about the remainder. What if we want to force something into being a decimal point? Well, on a computer, we refer to decimals as floating point numbers. If you think about scientific notation, decimal point floats back and forth. When you multiply by 10, the decimal goes one way. When you multiply by 10 to the negative first, it goes the other way. So on a computer, we refer to decimals as floating point numbers. There's a command, which is like the opposite of int, called float. If you want to get the floating point answer, you use float instead. So I could say print 4 divided by 7. That's going to force it to be a decimal. 4 divided by 7 will give me a decimal. But if I also add on here this command, it's still giving me a decimal. So as I said earlier, like there are some things we're going to introduce to you right now that you won't quite make sense of yet. Remember int, but also remember float for the days to come. Because when we do input, the computer's going to want to know, are we typing in an integer? Are we typing in a decimal? Or are we typing in something else? Are we typing in a string? And there's commands for each. So that's why I want to make sure to show you both of those here. Last thing I'll show you to wrap up the video will be how to print out a certain number of decimal places. So let's say I have a variable, pi, 3.14159. Right? So if I print pi, that's going to give me the entire thing, 3.14159. And when I say entire thing, I mean the entire thing for what I have right there. What if I want to print just like the first two decimal places, 3.14? Well, the percent sign is used for mod, but the percent sign is also used when you want to format printing. It's a little weird. Let me show you how it's done. In quotes, we're going to use a placeholder, almost like fill in the blank. We're going to say percent %f, which F stands for floating point number. But I don't want just any float. I want to format it to a certain number of decimal places. So I'm going to actually put point and then however many places I want before that. So 0.2f. And then I close it off, which again, when something's in quotes, it prints literally, but there are certain codes that override that. This is an overridden code. What I do then after the quote, I don't put a comma, but I actually put another percent sign, and then I put the variable. I know that looks super strange, but if I run that and try it out, instead of 3.14159, which is what it printed up here, it's formatting it to 2 decimal places. And in fact, just to show you something else to kind of wrap this up here, remember I talked about it chops off the decimal. When you do this, watch this. If I do 0.4, so 3.1415 or 3.1416, will it round when I format the printing? It will in fact round it. It'll give me 3.1416. The 9 will take the 5 and go up to 6. So again, there's the stuff in this video doesn't really fit anywhere else, but it's things we're going to use throughout the entire year. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. Otherwise, that concludes this video. Have a great day.